Hello, my name is Christy Godwin and I'm a psychic medium. I'm here today with Pam. Thank you so much for being here today, Pam.
Thank you so much for inviting me and thinking of me. I appreciate that.
I'm going to warn everyone, if you have recently lost someone or in the process of walking through someone towards the end stages of their life, you might not want to watch this. This could definitely be a trigger because we're here really going to talk about the grieving process with Pam. She's so brave to be here today, as you will learn as we walk through this. How long have we known each other, Pam?
About, I would say, maybe 9 months.
9 months? Yeah, I met Pam in a class. It was a, I don't know, be your own psychic class. And it was one of those I had taken. And once I was in it, I was like, I don't think I belong in here, just because I always equate it to you don't take freshman English again once you've already taken it. But I made some beautiful friendships in that class, and Pam was one of them.
I am so blessed to have met you. And I think I've told you several times, I was trying to close cycles. When I joined the class, I was trying to figure out how to get over my dad's death after grieving for almost 4 years. I couldn't get over it. And I mean, I could just say you helped me through just like in such a short period of time to, kind of like heal all that, heaviness that I had in my soul. And things that you would find here and there, and trying to heal certain parts of your spirit that I couldn't quite like make it happen. So I'm just blessed, and I think that my dad guided me through that class to meet you because he knew that you were going to be that friendship.
And we were never partnered up, but I could just tell a lot of people in this class were struggling, kind of like I was in the beginning stages of not knowing what to do. Is this real? Just what to do with it. And so I offered my services out to people to get.
Yeah. And I remember when you had, I don't even remember the name of the student that was talking to you, but I think it was the first one. And she's like, Christy was so on point on everything that she told me. And I was just crying. And I was like, Samantha, can you partner me with Christy next time? And it's like a random like partnership, like, so you don't know who you get.
Right.
And I was like, waiting, I'm like, okay, second week I'm going to get Christy. Third week I'm going to get Christy. And then like second week didn't get Christy. Third week didn't get Christy. And I'm like, well, like the class is over now. Like I'm not going to be able to, do anything. I was just like disappointed until I just decided to like tell Samantha, hey, I need you to tell me about somebody that can help me, because like I don't feel like I'm closing chapters. And then you emailed me and you said, hey, you know what? I've heard your story. And I was like, oh, Christy, thank you for reaching out. I was just so excited because I always wanted to partner with you, and like it wouldn't happen in the class. So I'm just so happy that you reached out,
because I think that was a blessing.
You wouldn't even share like emails, right? Like I think everything was in private, so it's not like you could see or something. I don't know how, but I'm just so grateful that I have you in my life.
I knew I had not started my business yet. For those of you who don't know the timeline, I had not started my business, but I knew it was probably coming. And I only had a certain amount of time to still give free readings that are called trades, except I really didn't trade with anyone in that class. I just was giving free readings, which was great. I, enjoyed the practice, made some great friendships. And so then I read you the first time your dad came through. And I think what you said was so spot on about the healing. I hear that so much.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's like taking a weight out off of my back. That's the only way that I can refer to it, because I would like turn into religion. I turn into prayer. I turn into many, many things, and nothing was really, it would guide me little by little with certain things here and there, but it wasn't like the closure that I was looking for. And also, I was just afraid that if I reach out to just anyone, how do I know that it's legit? And like I trust
yourself, and you trusted yourself. You tried. When I reached out, it was a good thing. And something else I want to mention to people watching this, that I don't just say, oh, yes, Pam, here's your dad. It does not go that way. I describe the person stepping up. They give me information that I would not know. And then you tell me who they are.
Exactly.
They have the energetic vibration of a dad. But sometimes you'll have, uncles or something who have that same energetic vibration. It's according to how they were connected to you. But you're your dad. And I had a bone to pick with her dad, because I talked to him several times. He had never mentioned the fact he was a dancer. And
no,
you called me, or we were talking anyway. I was out shopping. I was like, your dad is dancing. What is, and you're like, I can't believe he's just now mentioning that he was a professional dancer.
That was like the first thing that I thought. I'm like, he was so proud of what, like because he became an American citizen because he worked with the Arthur Murray Academy. Like, he
Yes.
was training ballroom dancing, and he got his citizenship back in the 50s towards, like he won world championships with dancing. So I would be like, well, it just makes sense that that was like the proud and joy that he had in his life, and that he would mention it, right? But I guess he just wanted to reserve that for like a later reading.
And he did. And you know what? It was perfect because he reserved it for a time. I had communicated with you, and someone else had just passed. I think it was your uncle or someone.
Yes.
And
He
so
did.
he reserved it when he was coming up, and him and your uncle were kind of dancing up to me. And it was, so he did reserve it for just the right time.
That's the right time. That's
So
so
then
sweet.
I had a one-on-one with Pam, and then she really stretched me when she says, now I've done it so many times I can't even count, but she's like, Christy, do you read multiple people at one time? Remember that?
Yeah. Because I wanted you to bring my, my mother-in-law that I never got to meet, like in the physical world. And we were all, I remember like my husband used to talk too much about, so much about her, and how, he wanted her to be, a connection, because he had never had dreams about her. He never felt that there was any closure, because I had several dreams of my dad when he passed. So he was very conflicted about the fact that he couldn't reach out to his mom. And I was like, well, I don't think anybody in the family like has really had that closure. So that's when I asked you, hey, can we do a Zoom call with, JD's sisters and his dad, and like everybody, so they can all hear the reading. And I thought that was really cool.
And it was funny because I didn't realize what this was all about. Now, mind you, I didn't know Pam at the time. And I was in the living room talking to my daughter, and I was telling her about, because I was texting you about setting up the Zoom thing. And a lady in spirit came and sat beside me on my couch while I'm talking to my daughter. I'm like, well, hello. And my daughter, my family thinks nothing of that anymore. And she's like, oh, who's there? It's like a lady, and she's all dressed nicely, very classy. She has a drink. And it was, your mother-in-law, JD's mom. And then I did not realize at the time that your husband was ill.
Right.
Because the first reading had just really been about your dad, didn't realize it. And then when we pop up on the Zoom and his whole family is there, I can clearly see that JD is ill and is battling cancer.
Yeah, he was battling stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He was in for about 4 months into the journey. He got diagnosed May 2020. I would say the middle of May 2020. And I think the time that we did the call was probably late August. So yeah, he was probably battling for 4 months, and he was going through chemo. And I think that's why, one of the reasons why he was so, he also wanted to have that, relationship spiritually with his mom, because he felt that he needed her to be there for this journey, like your parents are important whenever you're battling something so strong.
And so I treated that much like I would a platform. I just was taking spirits as they came up. I don't even remember who all came through except for JD's mom. Because for those of you who aren't familiar with this business, you really are not supposed to cry in readings. And his mother was the first one that made me cry, because I turned when she came up, and JD, bless his heart, is the one who really made me feel so much better about that, because I turned to his mom and instantly she showed me where JD's journey was going to end, but there was no way I was going to say that to his family. I just wasn't going to do that. But I started crying. Not like boohoo crying, but I definitely had tears because I'm trying to fight them back. And it's like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I don't usually do this in readings. And JD was so sweet. He's just like, don't worry, you've made us all cry. You're just part of the family now, part of the crying family.
Yeah, I remember that part. I remember, them all being really emotional, and the way that, you started feeling that, that emotion towards that. I was like, oh, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Like, it was just like kind of like the overwhelming feeling,
Yes.
But so, it's shocking every time, because just the way that nobody else can be able to give you that peace whenever you have a reading, except the medium that you're with, in this case you, like no doctor, no priest, no anybody. Like this is like a special thing, and I think it should be more popularized, and I think it is right now. Like it's like people are opening more about the idea. And I remember that time where where you told us about what JD's mom, was feeling, and you said, well, he's gonna be eventually. I remember that you said you guys are gonna. He's gonna be at peace, or it's gonna get worse before it gets better. I think that's the thing that you said. It's gonna get worse before it gets better. So I remember September, he was like 30% less cancer. He was like, California, we get really, really, really bad heat waves, where at least where I live, it's like Vegas type of like weather. So during the summer, especially, I would say end of August until October, like the temperatures are over 100, 112, 117. So I remember he was not supposed to be out in the sun because the doctor said, because of chemo, you're gonna, you can't be out in the sun for a long time. And if you are, you have to put a lot of sunblock on. And I remember at that time, he bought a little raft boat that he wanted to, take to the lake and be able to, that was going to be his like therapy boat. So he bought the boat and he was like, pimping it out. He put like chairs in it. He put like an umbrella on it. So he was just working on the boat. And I just remember talking to him and saying, JD, you really need to take it easy. Like you feel better now, but you can't waste all your energy in a boat. And you really need to, prioritize about the things that you need to do. I remember like telling him several times, and he's like, well, I'm laying in bed. I've been laying in bed for 4 months, and all I want to do is just do something that makes me happy. So it kind of broke my heart. And I was like, well, yeah, you're right. Like he has not been able to go out until now that he's feeling much better. So I remember after the boat, he passed into another project. Remember, like, weeks after that, I went to visit my mom in Mexico. And then we brought a little bunny for my daughter because she was going through therapy, and the therapist decided that it was a good idea to have a pet, right? So she had a pet bunny, and JD decided to make this like bunny mansion, right? So he's like working on the bunny mansion, doing this. And I'm like, this is not priority. You don't need to be doing this. You need to be, so it was like a good month that he had. When we were really positive, we had like this like little 5 people reunion where we were celebrating the fact that the cancer was shrinking. So I remember, feeling happy, and I would like through the journey, we had my cousin Bibi, she's a Reiki master. So she was like helping us with healing and stuff. So I remember after a month in October, like communication kind of stopped with her. And I was like, okay. And I would text her and she wouldn't text back. And I would call her and she wouldn't call back. And she would text little messages here and there to JD, but not me. And I would be kind of hurt about it because I'm like, well, she's my oldest cousin. Like people don't know about my dad, but my dad had me in his like early 60s. So this cousin that I have is my oldest one, and she's like 80 years old. So she was, helping with the healing process and everything. And, he was just in really bad pain all the time after this month that he had of, great energy. And I just remember feeling so incredibly overwhelmed because I'm like, well, you were fine for a month. And then his results, came back that his blood levels were, white blood levels were decreasing. So they had to stop chemo for a few weeks. So I said, well, maybe it's okay if he stops for a couple of weeks because he's like losing more weight. He's, looking thinner. And, finally, when he was supposed to have chemo, this was like a Wednesday, and he was supposed to have chemo on a Tuesday. That was the end of October. And I remember that he told me, they're supposed to do an MRI on me because I have a lot of pain, but I'm not going to be able to take this pain until Sunday. Like I can't wait another week for the MRI. So I remember I was calling doctors, they wouldn't listen. So finally a nurse came to our rescue and said, if you go directly to the emergency room and there's an order where you have to do MRI, just go in and make them do the emergency MRI. So that's what we did. They scheduled the MRI from the doctor directly to the ER, to the emergency room so they could be able to do it. And after that, it just went downhill from there. And I was just,
I do
Yes.
remember you calling me at one point, right at the beginning of, like, after that month of him doing really well. And I just want to say what a wonderful spirit JD had during the entire process. I mean, he was just so positive and uplifting during the whole thing. But because I was really trying to figure out how to tell you what his mother was telling me, because
No, but this was after. This was after, because that was after the surgery. The surgery didn't happen then. It was in November. Remember that I said,
No,
Christy.
whenever you called and you were asking me opinion about a treatment, and I said his mom shows him, and you said, "What's his mom saying? What's his mom saying?" And I turned to her, and in my head, I'm saying, "You better make this good, because I'm not saying anything that's going to kill their hopes or hurt their spirit, because free will can change anything." So even though, yes, I did have a feeling that JD was going to pass, free will, you just cannot say that 100%. That's the reason you don't. And so his mom you were asking about a treatment or something, and his mom was showing like the finish line, and JD not making it to the finish line. He was digging himself in.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
And so
When I told you, yeah, when I said he wants to continue chemo on the Tuesday. Remember when he was having the pains, and I said, but I don't think he's gonna be able to make it at this pace because he's feeling so,
yes,
he's losing weight. And you said his mom is telling me that he needs to take a break or he's gonna end up,
yes.
like.
And
Yeah.
so his mom was showing me him digging in and not making it to the finish line. And so I just gave you the symbol. I knew what the interpretation was. Your interpretation was he needs to take a break and not.
Yes, that was what I
And
thought.
so
Yeah.
I did not correct you and change and say, "Oh, well, I think the interpretation is different." And so I remember specifically turning to his mom. No, his mom's in spirit. And she just kind of smiled at me, like, because she knew I was not going to give you anything that was going to hurt your hopes or make you think he wasn't going to make it, because you never do that. Free will, I mean, anything can happen.
Mhm. Yeah.
Now we're at the part where Pam gets angry at me.
I'm like, listen. so so I remember like being in the hospital and everything, and it was a hard month of the end of October, a really hard November, because he had one surgery, and that surgery he came out, but he didn't come out completely the way that we expected. And I said, Christy, you really need to tell me what's going on here, because I'm feeling like he's not going to make it. Like, what's going on? And I think you know something and you're not telling me. And Christy, that's when you said, you're like, okay, well, do you want to know the truth?
Watching this, she's saying it really nice right now. She was. I did not falter. I knew, because I'm on the other end of the phone, like.
But we weren't on the air. Like, we weren't talking to everybody.
Right. We were not being recorded, and they weren't going to be listening to us. So she was voicing her opinion to me.
I was angry.
Rightly so. I understood it, was not offended, didn't care.
I'm sorry.
No, I was teasing because I thought it was funny at the moment where I felt like I had been caught in my own game. Like I had this information that I had just not been divulging to you. And it was like this light bulb went off on you, and you're like, oh, she knows.
Yeah, I knew that you knew, because I remember that when you told me, there was like hesitation in your voice. And that's when I was like, all right, like, I feel like you were thinking, okay, should I tell her or should I not? Or is she ready to hear this? And I feel like you were like, okay, I think she's at the point that she's desperate enough that she needs to hear the truth.
Yes.
That's when you told me he's not going to make it. And I don't even think he's going to get through March. And I was like, what? And I was like, he's like, I remember you telling me, I think that would be really pushing it. But I mean, it's kind of blurry to see if he's even gonna, make it through February, where his birthday is. Because I remember telling you, I was just asking you a lot of questions, and I remember saying,
let me tell you.
I was like, do you see him getting through May with the kids' birthdays? Do you see him getting through, March, where our anniversary? And I was going like backwards, May, March, February. And I remember when you hesitated, when I said May, you're like, well, it's kind of blurry. When I say March for our anniversary, you kind of like, kind of stopped and just kind of like took a deep breath and just kind of like, I felt like you were kind of like saying, okay, should I say something? Should I not? And then when I said February, you're like, I don't feel like he's gonna make it through his birthday. I don't. And I said, you remember you saying, but free will, like you could always, like, he was trying to give me hope, right? And that's totally understandable. But then when you told me that, I was like, oh my goodness, like I have just a few months, try to comfort him and try to, just let him know that if there's something that he needs to tell me or something that he needs to voice when it comes to end of life conversations, like he should, And I remember we were really transparent when it comes to that stuff. Like JD and I, like, he knew that I was blunt about it. And I would always ask him, is your body feeling different? Do you feel like certain parts of you are having more trouble as the weeks are going through? And I remember him always saying no, always saying that he was just tired. And, I wanted him to do recordings for the kids. I wanted him to do, letters and spend time, and it was just worse and worse and worse. Like, I mean, from November when he had the surgeries to December, he aged about 40 years. I mean, he still looked 40 something in November, and at the end of the life, he was looking like an 85-year-old man. Like, he, like, literally in a month, he just went downhill so fast. And it was just shocking in the way that I knew that it was going to happen. But your human, hope, I feel it's kind of like, okay, I know that it's going to happen, but I can't put myself in the moment where he's going to pass. And that day, like, I remember dreading that feeling of that day, like the final day, right? Like the day that it's going to happen. I just remember being like, oh my goodness, like, how am I going to get through it? Like, please make it January. Please make it January. I don't want it to be during Christmas. I don't want it to be during New Year's. Like, it's gonna put this huge shadow on the holidays. I don't want that. I just wanted him to have this happy Christmas. And I knew, and you knew, that it was gonna be his last Christmas. And I remember not telling him, we know that it's gonna be your last Christmas. But I remember telling him, I want you to tell me if you feel that this is your last Christmas, because if it is, I would like to make it special for you. Mm-hmm. And I remember him looking at me like, are you serious? Like, are you like going there right now? And I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have addressed it that way. And he's like, no, Pam, like, I'm feeling like I'm going to get through it. And I told you, I'm going to beat cancer by December. If I don't beat it by December, it's going to be maybe by March, but that's my mentality. And no, it's not going to be my last Christmas. And I would get really conflicted with the fact that we knew in our spirit that it was going to happen, conflicted to the fact that he was just so positive in his mind that he was going to do it, that he was going to make it. And he would keep telling me, don't worry. It's going to be fine. Don't worry. And I would worry because I'm like, you're not fine. I am worried because you're positive, but what if? There's always a what if. And I don't want to crush on your spirits, but it's just, look at yourself. You're losing 10 pounds every week. I can't emotionally not do something. No. Right. So I remember when December came, he was already kind of like having this weird, that you would ask him things and then he would respond to other things. And I'm like, okay, the toxicity levels, because at that point, his liver wasn't working and he was turning really yellow. Mm-hmm. So I remember being like, why is he so yellow? He looked like a character from The Simpsons. Like, it was just ridiculously yellow. I could not believe how his skin was so bad. And we went to the doctor with the oncologist with the hopes that he would, gain some weight. And the doctor said, okay, well, we're going to give you 1 week to either stop losing weight or gain 2 pounds, because if this is your last chance to continue chemo for January, and if you don't either maintain your weight or gain 2 pounds, you're just going to have to accept the fact that you're going to hospice. And I remember just feeling so desperate, and I would see him so tranquil, like, oh, whatever, another week, nah, it's going to be fine. So he wasn't even like making it the effort to like really, gain the weight, right? So I remember just being like, JD, like, 1 day passed, he wouldn't eat. 2 days passed, he wouldn't eat. 3 days passed, and I was like, you're losing, like, those pounds that you're losing those 3 days, you're not gonna gain them back. So either start eating and do something about it, or this is it. Like, I remember just feeling like, he's like, I'm just not hungry. So I remember next week when we went back to the doctor, that the doctor, said, as soon as he stepped on that scale, he went from 120 to 110. And I was like, he lost another 10 pounds. Like he
And
didn't
JD,
gain.
he was a taller guy. How tall was he?
He wasn't that tall. I mean, he was 5'9" when I met him. And by the time that he had surgery, they took one of the vertebrae out, then he was down to 5'7". So
Okay.
he was shorter at the end of life. Yeah.
But that's nothing for someone to weigh.
Yeah. No, and it went worse after that. Like he was just losing. I think when he passed, he was about 98 pounds, like when he like finally like passed. But I remember going a week after, and when I saw the scale, I'm like, this is it. Oh my goodness, this is it. And I remember even looking at him, JD, you lost another 10 pounds. You know what this means, right? And he's like, kind of like went like, whatever what the doctor said. Like, I'm still gonna, like, I feel like he was in such denial. And I just knew that was it. I was like, that's it. You're done. Like, that's it. And I was like, how are we going to cope? Like, let's start doing preparations. That's when I accepted, I feel like, when I finally said, I think that we should just be realistic about what's going to happen. And I remember when we finally talked to the doctor said, well, if you go back to chemo, just thinking that if you might, for some miracle, gain another 10 pounds, with the chemo, you might be able to make it another 2 or 3 months. And I said, okay, you're saying that he's going to make it 2 or 3 months with chemo towards healing? Or is it 2 or 3 months only if he's doing chemo? Like, be clear about what you're saying. Because I was just like, so like over it, right? So he's like, okay, so if he doesn't do chemo, which he doesn't qualify now, I give him a couple of weeks. And I was like, what? And I remember that's when JD kind of like, I felt like he got even paler than he was. And he was just like, what? And he's like, I'm so sorry. There's no way. And that's when I said, oh my goodness. And I just remember talking to myself in my head and being like, I told you about the eating. I told you about, and I can't judge him because I know cancer patients are, and my dad was the same way. He battled cancer. He wasn't hungry. It's just like a struggle. So after that, even though we knew, like, I remember talking to him about if he wanted to be buried or if he wanted to be cremated, and we're just kind of started talking about end of life stuff. And even though he knew that he was sent to home hospice, he wasn't entirely accepting, and it was just frustrating because I just wanted closure. And I'm like, I feel it's really important to have closure, as a family member and as a caregiver, and also for him to have that closure. But whenever they are not receptive to closing chapters, then there's only one willing part. So I feel that I struggle with that at the end of life, that I was trying to, just trying to make sense out of it. And that would be something that he would say over and over again. Like, I'm so glad that it happened to me and not to you, because I couldn't bear seeing you waste away the way that I am wasting away, because he was aware of how, he was wasting away.
And just, I remember you talking so much how hard it was to see him in that pain. I think that was harder for you than anything. And,
It was,
and you talk about not being able to accept, but it's uncomprehendable, because JD was young, you're young, y'all have young kids. And so what you were going through is just something that is uncomprehendable. I mean, it's not something that's easily processed on either end.
Right.
And JD was such a caretaker of you, and such a great dad. He could not imagine not being here to take care of you. And just still remember, well, we're jumping ahead just a tad bit, we'll come back to it, but even now after he's passed, just for those of you who are watching, every time JD comes through, all he talks about is how beautiful his wife just constantly. And, Pam talked about how he would say that. And
he would say it all the time.
The time. Just constantly is having me relay to her just how beautiful she is, just even without makeup, like he loves her without makeup. And
that was his favorite look.
Yeah,
he's like, makeup is the best look. And I'm like, really? I'm like, no.
We talked the other day and you didn't hardly have any makeup on or something. You had lipstick or something, but not much makeup on. And JD had stepped forward and he was, again, just saying, oh my goodness, she's so beautiful today. She's so beautiful. And that's when you said, oh, he loved me without makeup.
Yeah, I I remember being like, he just loves me without makeup. I don't know why. It makes no sense because I feel like I look terrible without makeup. And he was just like, he didn't really like me wearing any makeup. He would be like,
Yeah. And so I
yeah,
think
just
that was part of his, just he could not fathom what he was going through, and he couldn't fathom leaving his beautiful wife and his kids and not being there to take care of you. He just couldn't wrap his brain around it.
right. I mean, he would just always say, I'm so glad that it's not me taking care of you because I couldn't do it, Pam. Honestly, I don't think I could do it. And I was just talking to another friend, like I think a couple of days ago, and I said, it's just so funny, but like really messed up in a way that he would, I feel like he wouldn't be taking care of me. I feel like he would continue to work and maybe like my mom would be taking care of me like through my last days of like a situation like cancer. Because I saw it whenever my kids were born. With my second, with Max, it was more like, okay, well, he stayed for like 2 weeks, but he wouldn't take off 7 months just to be take care, caring for me. So he told me I couldn't do it. I couldn't. So he would like, I feel like at the end of his life, he would just look at me with such grateful eyes. He
Yeah.
wouldn't say it anymore, but the way that he would look at me would be like, oh my goodness, I'm just so happy that you're here to take care of me. And he would always say, I just feel like I'm such a burden because sometimes I would get really upset and I would say, I've made you a sandwich. I've made you this. I've, cleaned the house. I've taken Max to school. I'm doing all this and I'm, bringing you food and you're not eating it. I mean, like, why am I wasting my time? And he would just say, I'm so sorry. I'm just not hungry. I don't want to be a burden anymore. And it would just like break my heart because I was like, well, you're not a burden. It's just like all the work that I have to do. And so those 2 weeks where he was losing more weight, getting more yellow, getting more confused. I remember being the week of Christmas and I just started feeling very sad because whenever the kids arrived, it was like the immediate decline. It was kind of like the kids arrived on the December 22nd. And even though JD wasn't, he wasn't open to seeing them because he was very troubled with the fact that he looked so thin and so old. I feel like his spirit was waiting for them to come for him to pass because he started declining literally 24 hours after they came here. It was the 22nd.
Very fast.
Fast. They came the 22nd, the 23rd, they had like conversation with him. During the 24th on Christmas Eve, I remember him going in and out of consciousness. Like he started the day fine. Like then it was like a little confusing. And then in the afternoon, he was sleeping a lot, but still conscious. So I remember, there were a couple of paperwork he needed to sign that he hadn't signed yet because of, him not believing that he was going to pass. So I remember Christmas Eve, instead of being like a joyful celebration, it was like, calling a priest for the last rites, doing like the notary, like, having people over so they can testify. Like, it was just like a bunch of stuff that it was just kind of like, oh my goodness, like this is really happening. This is the beginning of the end. Like right now, it's going to be a few days and he's going to pass. And I just, I'm just kind of like remembering, calling you and being like, just hold my hand through the process because I don't think I'm going to be able to do it alone. And you were it just makes me so grateful. You were through that entire week. Call, like, doesn't matter if it was early in the morning, whenever. I was like, Christy, I need you to tell me, how do I do this? Like, how do I guide him through? Because I went through, like, it was the same process with my dad. And I'm so grateful now, like, I understand how things happen. And I feel like my dad's death just prepared me so much for 4 years later, JD's death, because it was exactly the same pattern. It was like consciousness in and out. Then he was kind of like waking up in like burst of energy and he would get like, okay, I need to go now. And I'm like, how are you up? Like, there's no way that you could get up like that fast. Like, he would like just shoot up and be like, okay, I need to go now. And I would be like, where are you going? And he would just kind of like, get back in bed. And I would put him back in bed, but he would have all these like weird end of life burst of energy. And I remember just, Christy being so, I would be like, you need to talk to his spirit and like do something, because I don't feel like he's letting go. I feel like he's just worried, and he's probably regretting the fact that he was like in denial all the time, that now he's like, well, now I can't express anything. And, I remember the 25th, he was completely out of conscious. The 26th, the priest came here for the last rites. And, I knew that he was dying the entire time. I'm like, this is just his body disconnecting slowly, because it was like what happened with my dad. My dad was a 7-day transition, but I feel like my dad was more accepting of his death, and he was like, okay, I'm ready. I just want to let go and it's going to be fine. But I feel JD, since he was like so young, he was just kind of like conflicted, like, okay, I know that I have to do this, but I don't want to do it. And he was just agonizing, the 25th, the 26th, the 20. And I was just kind of like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Like, I am trying to guide him, and I promised him that he was not going to suffer, and hospice would not be, I feel like spiritually, you helped him so much to let go and just finally like detach from his body, because I feel like he was also in need of guidance, because he was in such denial. And if you're in denial, how are you going to pass? Like, you're going to get trapped.
Now we're getting into a little bit of the story where some people may really struggle with what we're about to talk about.
Yes. So pause it now if you can't take it.
Right. If you can't take it, you might want to pause now for mess with your belief system. But because I remember you messaged me, and I had talked to you one day, and he was fine, not fine, but he was coherent, signing papers, wills, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And then it was like the next day you're messaging me, or I can't remember if you called or message, whatever. You said, tap into him. What are you feeling? And I tapped into his energy, and he felt like a different person.
You told me that. Yeah. His energy changed, you said. Completely.
And I was like, what's going on? I mean, it did not even, I could tell it was JD, but it was just completely different. And then I've had this happen a couple of times, a few times. After all my practices, I've realized what it is when you talk to people, are detaching from their bodies so much that I can communicate with them like they're in spirit. And so JD did get to that point. Was that the 27th that happened? Was it the 27th he passed?
I remember he passed 27th in the morning, but I remember there was a lot of late night texts that I was like, he's agonizing, Christy, you just need to tell him to let go. And I'm like, he's suffering too much. It's just the way that he would like agonize and just like breathe super fast. And I'm like, he literally, like the normal rate of, beating, heart beating, I think it's about 75. And he was up to like 140. So it's like running for 5 hours and not stopping and not stopping. And I'm like, he doesn't have the energy. How is he like clinging? Like his body has 0 calories for the past, I don't know how many weeks. Like, how is he running on fumes? And I was just like, just let go, just let go. And I would like encourage him, just like, just let go. And I feel like he was like, I don't know if he was hearing me and trying to answer, but he couldn't like, talk. Cause I feel that I know that science hasn't proven anything, but I feel like whenever you start dying, kind of like maybe like you were conscious in a way, but like maybe your body doesn't, you want to talk, but maybe your tongue doesn't respond, or maybe like your fingers don't respond. And I would remember telling him, if you can't talk, squeeze my hand for yes or no. And then he wouldn't. So I was just like, you need to be here, Christy. Like, you need to help me out.
During this, I was in constant contact with Pam. And so I had talked to JD. Like, JD is his biological body is alive, and you feel like he's going through pain. And when I went to access him to check his body, I saw his spirit. And so then I'm talking to his spirit, even though he's still alive. And I know this is going to mess with some people's belief system. I get it. But it happens a lot when people have advanced Alzheimer's or in comas or something like that. So I'm asking him, I said, JD, I said, your family thinks you're in pain. And he actually described some of the room to me where he was. And I mentioned it to you, and you're like, yeah, that's where people are sitting. Because he was telling me this person's here, this person's there. And then I was relaying it to Pam, and she's like, yeah, that's where we're sitting. And so he was saying he wasn't in pain. I was like, JD, your family, I mean, they think you're in pain. And so I had talked to him for a while. Then it was weird because JD was there and I was talking to him, and then your dad and mom, or his mom and your dad, were with him in spirit. And they were kind of still just hanging out next to him as was communicating with him. And then I saw his guide come over, and I could feel myself being energetically kind of pushed away. I was like, JD, I know I'm not going to be able to talk to you for very much longer, because I see your guide's coming up. How much longer? Pam is struggling with the fact that you're suffering.
Yeah, I'm like, how many, like hours, days, like
3. And I wasn't quite sure what three, because he said three. And so I relayed it to you. I said, he's showing me the number three, Pam. And you said 3 hours. And I was like, I didn't want to confirm or deny because we're in, uncharted territory here. And then he passed in 4.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he passed like 3.5 because it was a little past 11. And I think the text message that we exchanged it was like 8 in the morning. So technically it was within the 3-hour period, but it wasn't exactly at 11 on the dot, but it was like 11:10 or 11:15. I mean, I was just so, like we were just like crying and like hugging him and everything, that by the time that I saw the clock, it was already like 11:15. But in my brain, I'm thinking he's probably passed, around 11:06, 11:07, because it was like a 5-minute thing that we were just hugging and like, but I was just so proud of him, so proud of him that he finally detached. Because I remember you telling me, he's having a long talk with his guide. Like I see his guide here, like sitting with him and like a bunch of people just waiting for him. And I remember you telling me, I've never seen so many people waiting for someone. And they're just kind of like, okay, whenever you're ready, JD, like we're here. And then you told me, I see him looking on that side, but like talking to his guide, and his guide kind of explaining what's going on, saying, your body's never going to go back to how it was. Like there's no way that it's going to be back into a normal situation. And I remember you telling me that you thought that he was probably not the best looking in his other lives, because he was saying like, well, look at my body, look at how beautiful I am.
I'll bring that up in a minute. Oh my goodness. So, and I do want to say that I would not have been doing this, like reading someone, had I not been with Pam during this entire journey. So no one can call or book an appointment with me and have me do this for them. It's just not ethical if you don't know the person. I mean, it was just because I knew Pam so well. I knew her state of mind. We were very good friends. There was a huge amount of trust between me, her, JD, and even the rest of your family. So I just want to put that out there. This is not something that's normal. The only reason it happened was because we were such good friends.
Right. And I've told you, I'm just so eternally grateful, because I needed guidance. Like I was just so lost when it came to that, because I didn't have that closure, because he was so positive about everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. And I was just like, everything's not fine. Look at yourself. Just kind of like in spirit, I was just so angry, so angry. And it was just it was just such a gift. And I'm just so grateful, like eternally.
And then you call me, he passed. I didn't realize he had passed because, Christmas is going on. We have a house full of people. I'm very distracted.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
No. And so you call me, and we had been messing around all day. It was later. I don't remember what time it was. It was in the afternoon, but I was about to get in the bath and the phone rings. I see issue. So of course I answer right away. You instantly say he's passed. And you say, do you see him? And I say, no, because I hadn't turned and tapped in, like I hadn't dropped the wall. But then I felt something and I turned and I could see JD running towards me. And my first word was like, I'm not going to say the actual word because we're being recorded, but I said, darn, Pam, you had a very good looking husband.
He's like, I didn't realize how good looking he was.
Right, because I had only known him with cancer and he was a very good looking man. And I just, even now, it just makes my heart so happy. He came up with such energy and beauty and instantly, and probably because, not probably, it was because I had already read with JD. I knew JD, so we already had kind of an energetic connection. So it was so easy for him to communicate with me. He popped up, and let me tell you, he started giving very definitive messages for everyone. I remember because I was like, okay, Pam, he's here. He's saying this and that. And I said, he says his dad's out in the hallway in a chair. And he's like, oh yeah, his dad's right out here in the hallway sitting in a chair. And so he started calling the family up, and then JD had just messages for everyone. And they were very specific, very spot on. And it wasn't, I do remember JD kept giving me the picture of him on a beach. And I still remember that because you couldn't figure it out. You're like, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm like, what does that mean? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I was, after JD has passed, and now we're, I don't know, like a month out, I was talking to you on the phone and your daughter pops into the screen. And then I was like, oh my goodness. I asked her, I said, do you have memories of you and your dad on the beach? And she's, beautiful memories. Her dad was always taking her to the beach. And that's why he kept giving me that beach scene.
Yeah.
it was related more to the kids and his wonderful memories of taking them to the beach.
Oh yeah, that was his favorite thing to do. Taking them to the beach, taking them for walks, go to the tide pools. Like the tide pools were big for him. Like, oh, let's go to the tide pools and like look at the little, like wildlife in there. And it's just one of the things that blew my mind during the reading after he passed was whenever he said he keeps showing me a bracelet or like a necklace, something beaded that you gave to someone, like maybe an older sibling. And I just remember like Steph and I like looking at each other like, whoa, like that's really? And I was like, oh my goodness, like I have a friend that gave me a crystal bracelet with different types of like gems, right? Like a rose quartz and like different like types of crystals. And I remember her telling me put the bracelet on his wrist as a healing like charm. And I remember when I opened the present it was a Christmas present from my friend Liz, I remember that Pearson saw the bracelet and he's like, oh, that's such a cool bracelet. Can I have it? And I said, no, that's your dad's bracelet that, I'm going to make him wear right now because it's a healing bracelet. So he said, oh, okay. And I said, but you know what, Pearson, I will give you that bracelet, when your dad passes, so you can have this really strong memory of him. So it meant a lot because to me, he was wearing it the moment that he passed. So the energy that it's left there, I feel like it's a really strong energy. So as soon as he passed away and we, ended up like, kind of like saying goodbye to him, I took the bracelet out of JD's wrist and I put it on Pearson's wrist. And I said, this is the bracelet that your dad passed in. Like, I feel like the energy's there. So, just wear it like you're the firstborn. So I think you deserve that. And then he was just like, it meant a lot to him. So I feel like it was something that JD could see there and he felt like it was worth mentioning it. So whenever you said, well, did you give a beaded like necklace or bracelet or something? And I was like, what? How do you even know that? Because I don't remember telling you any of this stuff.
No.
So it was just so mind-blowing to me. And it was like another confirmation of like, yes, he's there. Yes, he can see me, he can hear me, he can, he can just, be there even though physically is not the case, and it's hard to navigate without him. But it's just so, I just felt so happy to have that connection and be like, okay, he's with his mom. He's just, you're like, well, he has to go now because he has a party going on the other side. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like, well, we're grieving here, like he's having a party there, and that's like, he deserves it. He deserves that party.
And we have, Pam and I do talk, I don't know, like once every couple of weeks or something, but when we talk, it's like for a couple of hours. And so I would say to those of you who have a friend who's losing someone, even if you're not a medium, can't give that kind of support, just listen and don't judge what they're saying, because everyone's grief is different.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
You can't say what's right or wrong for you or for your friend, because it's such a personal process. And, you're going to feel guilt over some things you should have, would have, could have. You're going to feel angry. You're going to feel just so many different emotions. And something that you are angry over, someone else might not be angry over, but vice versa. And just don't judge when people are downloading those feelings of grief.
Right. I feel that there's no right or wrong when it comes to the grieving process. And there's never going to be, I know that they have like how many steps? 10 steps, 5 steps? I don't even know. I know that they're like, there's like psychology, like chart.
Yes.
So it's like, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go through the, okay, now I'm 1, 2, 3, like you can jump from 1 to 10 and from 10 to 3. So it's just like, it depends on, like, for me, the grieving process with my dad, it didn't really hit me until like month 3 or 4. Like I remember the first month I was like, oh, I guess I kind of like, but it was just so recent that it didn't feel like it. Sometimes I would go without seeing my dad 3 months because I was in LA, he was in Mexico. So I was just kind of like, oh, so, I started really feeling the loss around month 3. Right. And I was just feeling so overwhelmed, so incredibly like, I had this huge loss and it really hit me. And I said, well, I guess I'm kind of a late griever. And with JD, it was the other way around. The first month was just so much pain, so much emotion, so much anger, so much kind of like, I wish it was me and not you, type of feeling. And then month 2 was a little bit more accepting, even though I still had struggles with, with the loss. Because of course I get overwhelmed being a solo parent. I have a 5-year-old and a 10-year-old. So not so much the 10-year-old, but the 5-year-old, it's a lot of work. It feels like I have triplets with Max. Some days I'm just kind of like, oh my goodness, weekends are very hard usually. So, I just, month 2 was more accepting. And now that I'm, entering the beginning of month 3, on the 27th, I feel like I feel more normal on my new normal, because I have had that time to process, the grief. And like you've mentioned before, I've been grieving since he was diagnosed. I remember crying with him and being like, oh my gosh, there's like a 2% surviving rate for pancreatic cancer after a year, and I don't want to ask how many months you have left, but what's going to happen. And I just remember crying and feeling so detached, because we weren't communicating, we weren't connecting. It was all our talk was about cancer, about chemo, and about medication. That was our conversation for 7 months. So it was really hard. And I feel that I was grieving since before. So I think it's a little bit different that when it comes to somebody that maybe passed on an accident, or maybe they were fine and then wake up like they're not there. So you don't have time to close chapters in a way I did. And in another way I didn't, because I really wish that he would be more accepting and I would be more communicative about the things that I wished, he would do, and like recordings and stuff. But yeah, I feel like whoever's listening, don't feel like you have to grieve a certain way. Even if somebody that has had the same experience of losing a spouse, it's never going to be the same situation. It's never going to be the same exact situation. So don't feel that you have to do it the same way. Don't feel judged if you maybe feel more anger than hurt, or don't feel that it's wrong, that people don't quite understand. And also, some people think that they have to be there for you the first week, but I feel that really in reality, when you're grieving, you need to be there. Maybe reach out at 3 or 4 months. Like, don't just reach out the first week, reach out after 6 months, after a year, just to check, on the person, but don't completely detach from someone that's grieving, because just like you can be super fine, there are some nights that I feel super overwhelmed. Like a couple of nights ago, I remember, feeling, like he recorded this song, You're My Sunshine. I don't know if I've sent you the recording. Yeah.
Oh, yes, you have. Yes.
And he was singing You're My Sunshine. And I was just looking at a Katy Perry, video that was like in 2013. And then at the end of the video, Johnny Cash starts singing that song. And I just like started crying. I was like, oh my God, this is a sign. This is a sign. Like JD's like sending me this like on purpose. Because I've sent the video several times, but I don't remember that song being particularly there. And, it just hit me, really, really deep. And I was just kind of like, oh my goodness, like I was feeling so much better. And now I hear this and I break down, but it's just normal. Don't feel like you have to, either carry everything all at once, or feel like because you're feeling more normal on month 3 that it's wrong, or maybe sometimes you break down. Like every grief is going to be different, definitely different from grieving from my dad. It's a different type of love that you have. But yeah, I mean, I feel like, try to not get stuck on that either, try to, accept the new normal and try to walk towards something positive. Because even though it won't make sense, and I feel like it's important to, just kind of like embrace the feeling, leave the feeling, and then just kind of like release it. And every time that it comes in, like let it out. Don't hold it in, because it's just gonna
Absolutely.
it's gonna make your soul so much heavier if you just carry that. And then hopefully you don't have to be feeling that pain for another 4 or 5 years. Maybe it will. I mean, it might hurt still, but it's not gonna be the same type of a sadness. I don't think.
That's so true too. Feel the feeling and then let it go.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much for being here today. I so appreciate your time and being so open and honest with your journey.
No, thank you so much for inviting me, Christy, and for all the help. Like, honestly, I can't thank you enough.
Of course. So if anyone has any questions, please contact me at christygodwin111@gmail.com. Thank you so much.